31 days of October, week 3. Put this right here. Save it for the thumbnail. Actually, no, I'll just put it over here. What's up, guys? Welcome to week 3 of 31 days of October. We're halfway through this madness, and I got a jam-packed show for you guys. I got 3 guests. I have WWEFan0599. I got Bryan Lomax from Bryan Lomax Movie Talk, and I got Pete from Bearded Movie Guy. So this one's gonna be big, it's gonna be fun, and it's gonna be horrific. So first off, let's begin with one of my young YouTube friends, and we collabed a few months ago on a Goodfellas review, and we became fast friends, and we have kept in touch ever since. And he told me he would love to be on my 31 days, and so yeah, happily, let's do it. So take it away, WWE fan.
Hey, what's up, you guys? WWEFan0599 here again. And thank you, Drumdums, for having me on week 3 of 31 days of October. So I was able to see 5 horror films this week, and I guess let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about the 5 horror films that I saw this week. And first, we're going to start off with 31. Now, 31... Now, I'm not a fan of Rob Zombie, just let me put that out there. I hate Rob Zombie. I think he's one of the worst directors of all time. I've literally hated every single movie this guy has done, and yeah, 31 is no exception. 31 is garbage. 31 is trash. It is an awful movie. It is your typical Rob Zombie movie. Terrible characters, terrible acting, unnecessary violence. It's just violence for the sake of violence. Horrible writing, horrible directing. Just, it's your typical Rob Zombie movie. And I should have just already knew what I was getting myself into, because, like I said, I hate Rob Zombie. He's an awful director. He can't direct a movie to save his life, in my opinion. He's just a terrible director. So, 31, it was no exception. It has arguably the worst villain of the year in Doomhead. It's just an awful movie. It's one of the worst movies of 2016. I hated 31. It's an awful piece of trash movie. So, the next movie I saw was The Evil Dead. Now, pretty soon I'm going to be watching Evil Dead 2, because I'm going to be doing my own Halloween reviews. I'm going to be doing my Horror Fest thing on my channel. And I'm going to be watching Evil Dead 2. That's one of the things in the category. So, I decided to rewatch the first Evil Dead movie, because I just wanted to kind of revisit it and just kind of refresh my memory in some points. And I still stand by my opinion of what I said about it when I reviewed it back on my channel. It's still a very enjoyable horror film. You know, it's just a really good movie. I really enjoyed The Evil Dead. It has some really terrifying moments. You know, it's very enjoyable. It's definitely a great B-level horror film, you know what I mean? And it's very enjoyable. I really like The Evil Dead. It's a really good, enjoyable horror film, and you know, it really brought Bruce Campbell to, it's the movie that made Bruce Campbell, and that's why we know him as the myth, the man, the legend himself, Bruce Campbell, to this day, because of this movie. And yeah, sure, some of the writing's not the best, or it does get boring in the beginning at some points. But besides that, it's still a very enjoyable, very bloody, very gory, enjoyable movie. And I just really enjoyed The Evil Dead. It was a great step for Sam Raimi, and it's just a very enjoyable horror film. So yeah, The Evil Dead was the next movie I saw. So, the next movie I saw was They Live. You cannot go wrong with They Live. It is a fun action horror film. Seriously, They Live is such a fun movie. It's like the definition of fun. Okay, I love this movie. I love They Live. It is such an awesome movie. You know, you got my man, Roddy Piper. Man, it was just great seeing him in this movie, because, as you know, I'm a huge fan of wrestling. I mean, it's in my username. So, it was just great to see him in this movie, and he gives such a fun performance. You definitely can tell this guy was having tons of fun making this movie. I found him very enjoyable in this movie. The action was really well filmed as well. It was, of course, directed by the master of horror himself, John Carpenter, and he just did a great job directing the movie. Like I said, They Live is just a fun, enjoyable popcorn action horror film. You can't go wrong with it. It's just a very fun and enjoyable movie. So, the next movie I saw was Lights Out. Finally got the chance to see Lights Out. Lights Out was a very good horror film. You know, this year has been a really good year for horror films for the most part. It's been very enjoyable. You know, you got movies like Don't Breathe, or The Conjuring 2, or The Shallows, or Hush. And now you got this movie, because this adds to the list of very good horror films from 2016. I very much enjoyed Lights Out. It has a very neat concept behind it. I like how they used the concept, I thought they executed it very well in this movie. The movie has some really good characters. You know, you really care about the family actually in this movie. So yeah, Lights Out is definitely a very creative and very enjoyable horror film. So yeah, Lights Out was the next movie I saw. So the last movie I saw this week was Scream. Scream is definitely one of the greatest horror films I think of all time. Now, I did watch this movie. Well, this was the first movie I watched in October, but I saw it on TV again, and I just decided to rewatch it again because Scream, you just can't go wrong with it. It's the definition of a classic 90s horror film. And it's definitely the horror film that really saved horror films at the time because, you know, horror films, they were doing terribly. They weren't getting the greatest of reviews, and it definitely saved the horror genre. And I just love Scream. It's very enjoyable. You know, it has great performances, and it still holds up to this day. I love Scream. It's one of my favorite horror films of all time. So, that was the horror films that I watched this week. Thank you once again, Drumdums, for having me on your channel. Very much appreciated. So, yeah. I'm WWEFan0599, and we'll see you all later. Peace.
Okay, guys, my next two guests, they are near and dear friends of mine. We do the commentaries together on Bryan Lomax's channel, along with CP from Will I Like It Reviews. And so I'm super stoked to have those guys on this week. I'm talking about Pete from Bearded Movie Guy and Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. So first, we're going to start off with Bearded Movie Guy. Looking forward to seeing what he watched this week. Take it away, Pete.
Hi, I'm the Bearded Movie Guy, and yeah, I'm on Lee's channel. Thank you so much, Lee, for having me. Horror movies. Quick reference for people who don't know who I am. I'm a Bearded Movie Guy, and when I was a kid, I hated horror movies, and so I missed a bunch of them. And now I'm an adult, I kind of love horror movies. Now, when I say that, I don't love all horror movies. There's some that I don't care for, but especially the classics, I love them. So I've been trying to get my family, in particular my daughters who are 14 and 12, to watch some horror movies because they haven't really done that. So this is what we've been watching so far in October. I'm so excited to tell you because I'm on Lee's channel. Lee's awesome. Let's go. We started the month watching Pitch Black. Oh, I love this movie. It gives you the character of Riddick for Vin Diesel, and it's a good alien monster movie. They end up on a planet. If you don't know, it's like people end up on a planet crash landing, and there's a bad guy named Riddick, but they need him because he's big and strong, and plus he can see in the dark, and it turns out this planet's supposed to go all dark and beasties are gonna come and eat everybody. Yeah, it's really awesome. I really enjoy it. It's totally fun, and it set up a couple other Riddick movies, which I just love the character Riddick. It's Vin Diesel's best character, and he loves it too because he actually financed like the third one on his own money. I think he like redid his house mortgage or something. I don't know, but anyways, great movie, tons of fun, and yeah, I'm so excited to be able to show that to my daughters. Oh yeah, and I'm not going to be giving scores. I'm just going to be saying what I saw and how much I loved it or didn't love it. Yeah. Next up, Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. My daughter picked this one, my oldest daughter, Marjade. And yeah, because she thought it looked cool with the poster. And you know what? This isn't a terrible movie. It's not. It's not. No, it's really not. It's not. It's not. It's just, it's cheesy, fun, stupid. Doesn't make a lot of sense. It's got Gemma Arterton and Jeremy Renner being cool. Yeah. It's silly. It's dumb. Special effects aren't that good in certain spots, but it's, yeah. but it's okay. Next up, my youngest daughter Zion picked Friday the 13th, the original. She'd never seen it. They'd never seen it. They didn't even know what it was about. They thought it was about the day. They're like, oh, it's like unlucky stuff happening. And I'm like, this is so much fun because they don't know. And yeah, you know Friday the 13th. I know Friday the 13th, the first one. With, in case anyone out there hasn't seen it, which would be crazy, I keep on telling them not to spoil the ending because they keep on giving the ending away. Because they knew about Jason. Like, they knew what I asked them. I said, do you know anything about this thing? It's about a guy in a hockey mask. And I'm like, it's like, not the first one. And so yeah, it's like one of the Godfather movies of horror slasher films. It's tons of fun. It's well made. It's held up. It's actually a really good movie. And yeah, I'm so happy I finally got to watch it with my daughters. Next up, we watched Species, which is the first movie me and my wife ever wanted to date on, which showed me she was the one because she picked it. Species is a sci-fi movie where they take alien DNA and mix it with human DNA, and bad stuff happens. It's got pretty good performances from Michael Madsen and Forrest Whitaker and Ben Kingsley, and you know, Natasha Henstridge is nice to look at. Still, yeah, she is. It's good, it's fun, it's actually held up pretty well. It's a really decent sci-fi horror alien species movie kind of thing. Next up, me and my wife, without my children, watched The Guest. And it's so funny because she picked this movie and she had no clue that it was about Halloween in a sense, like it takes place during Halloween. And if you haven't seen The Guest, this is a seriously great movie. The guy who made this made Your Next, which was a really good movie. And then this came out and it's like, it keeps you guessing. You're not sure what the dude's problem is. Is he good? Is he bad? Is he losing it? Is he got some nefarious things going on? And yeah, it just unfolds and it's really well made and yeah, great acting. And the ending is just, I really enjoy it, especially the very, very ending. The fire, the outfit, you don't know. You know if you've seen it. If you haven't, just watch The Guest. Next up, we watched Sixth Sense. Oh my Lord. Now, if you don't know anything about The Sixth Sense, stop watching. If you do, I loved it because they had no clue. They were, my daughters were clueless. And watching their faces at the end, yeah, it felt so good. It is such a fun movie. It's such a well-made movie. M. Night Shyamalan's second best movie. I'm gonna say Unbreakable's his best, but it's when he was making really great films and then he turned into something else. But this is a phenomenal movie. Sixth Sense, great performances from Haley Joel Osment and Bruce Willis, and yeah, it's The Sixth Sense. Next up, my daughter chose the original 1943, I think, Phantom of the Opera. It's part of the Universal Monsters collection. This still looks great. It's actually colorized. It's the only one so far that is colorized out of the collection. And it's Phantom of the Opera. Now, if you don't know anything about Phantom of the Opera, you'll be surprised. It's a bit of a musical. There's a lot of singing, but it's filmed well, acted well, and yeah, it's just overall, it's a great movie. And I can see why they keep remaking it. I'm not a musical guy, so I don't really dig them, but this was well made and well done, so I can see why it stood the test of time. Next up, we watched 1408. 1408, of course, the room that is just an evil room. Yeah. This actually scared my daughters a bit too much and they had trouble watching it, so we had to put it off. We watched half of it, then watched the rest of the next day in the daylight. It was okay. It's a fun movie. John Cusack gives a really good performance. He has to carry the whole movie because he's basically one guy in a room for 90% of the movie. And he does a really great job, and it's tons of fun. Although the endings, if you've ever seen, I saw this movie in the theater and it has one ending, and then I bought it and it has a director's cut and that has a different ending, and I like the theatrical cut better. But then the one I watched was the director's cut again, but that has alternate endings on the disc, which has two other endings which aren't the theatrical cut. So there's 4 endings to this movie, 4 different endings. So look around, maybe like the theatrical one I found on YouTube, and it's the one I like the best, but you know, it's still a fun movie. It's a good haunted room movie. It's an evil room. Yeah. And lastly, what we've watched so far, we've watched Christine from John Carpenter. Oh, my daughters loved this movie. I mean, love this movie, and I love this. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan, and this was just great. it's such a well-made movie. It's like, it doesn't have any big stars in it or anything, but it's just so well told, and the car works so well, the way they like film it and stuff. And some of the special effects were pretty impressive considering there's no CGI used in them. And overall, it's just such a great movie. And I'm turning my kids into John Carpenter fans. The Thing will be a while away, but man, it's just great. And so, yeah, that's what we watched so far. We still have a few milestones we gotta hit before Halloween hits. So, like, they gotta watch Halloween, of course. It's Halloween. And we're showing them Psycho and Night of the Living Dead is the original zombie. But yeah, that's what I've been watching. And I love Halloween, I love horror movies. Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on your channel. This is awesome. Lee is an awesome guy. You know that. You're watching his channel. You're watching me on Lee's channel if you haven't fast forwarded. And yeah, thanks, buddy. Keep up the awesomeness, dude. Lee is just awesome. I'm so happy to have him as a friend. Thanks. Stay bearded.
Okay, guys, it's time for my last guest. This is Bryan Lomax from Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. And if you click on any of his videos, it's always interesting because you will see Lance Henriksen, Bishop himself from the Alien franchise.
Hi, I'm Lance Henriksen. You're watching Bryan Lomax's Movie Talk.
And he says, hi, I'm Lance Henriksen. Welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. I can't do that impression. But yeah, Bryan is a great friend of mine, and he's gonna mix it up a bit. He's gonna rank the Nightmare on Elm Street films for you guys. So anyway, take it away, Bryan.
Hello there, my name's Bryan Lomax from Bryan Lomax Movie Talk, and I'm very happy to be here. Of course, Lee has invited me onto his channel just to talk a little bit about the horror films that I've been watching recently. I've gone back recently and I've watched all the Nightmare on Elm Street films. Now, I am reviewing them all on my channel, so if you want to find out detailed reviews of what I think about these films, then please check those out. But what I thought I'd do here is rank them. So basically rate them and rank them in order of preference, starting with the least favourite and finishing obviously with my favourite of the franchise. First up, and this is my least favourite of the franchise, what I consider to be an absolute stinker, in fact, that's a Nightmare on Elm Street Part 6, Freddy's Dead. Yeah, it stinks. Now, it's impossible to watch now on a regular television because it was made for 3D. It was meant to be the kind of 3D where you stick the glasses on at home, but it just doesn't work. And the bits that are meant to be in 3D have some really bad special effects. So when you're just watching it in a 2D version, it does not translate well at all. Beyond that, the story is all over the place, the characterizations are really poor, the performances are even worse. I give Freddy's Dead a 2 out of 5. Next up is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. Now, I liked kind of where they wanted to go with this film, where they were trying to go with this film, but yeah, it don't work. Again, because the story is all over the place. It's just, they have this idea and it doesn't quite come to fruition. Now, I think if I remember, this is the one that was written during a writer's strike, and pretty much everybody had involvement in the script, and it really shows. It's not a good film. It has some good special effects in it, some really good body horror stuff, the kind of thing that Tom Savini would be proud of, but all the little parts that make up the film don't really add up to much, so not a great film. So I'm going to give The Dream Master a 2 out of 5. Next up is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. Now, this is obviously the first sequel, and they kind of just got rid of all the main characters from the first one, particularly the role played by Heather Langenkamp, Nancy, and I think the film suffers for it because we don't really address that ending from the first film. It's just gone. I appreciate its attempt to kind of relate some real world problems, real world issues, real world things that teenagers have to go through and deal with to the film. You know, some of the best horror does that, but it just doesn't do it well. That's the problem. I'm going to give this film a 2.5 out of 5. And so in my number 6 spot we have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, The Dream Child. This was the direct sequel to Part 4, and obviously that is a direct sequel because it's 4 and 5, but what I mean is they continued that story on. So whereas they didn't do that with the original film, when they went to the first sequel, they just kind of changed the story completely. This is the first time that actually we pick up where we left off, and we follow those characters again. So I like that they do that. I like that we stick with these characters, and I like that the female character in this, I can't remember her name just off the top of my head, but she becomes the Nancy character. She becomes the main character, and I actually prefer her to Nancy, the actress. I wouldn't say writing, I wouldn't say her character is written better than Nancy was. I think Nancy definitely was written better, but I think she's played better. And I just feel like the story for this one is just a little bit tighter than part 4. I feel like it's not as all over the place. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. At number 5 for me is the remake of the first film. So A Nightmare on Elm Street, the remake. It doesn't have the humour of kind of what kind of became prevalent throughout the series. Now, for those who didn't like the humour, me kind of being one of them, that's a good thing. I think as far as remakes go, this is a pretty decent one. Now, I've seen like your Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes, your Friday the 13th remakes, your awful Rob Zombie Halloween remakes. Sorry, Lee. But yeah, I do not like these remakes generally. I thought this one was actually pretty decent, and I think it's down to the concept, that original concept that Wes Craven came up with. I just think it's a really creative idea. It wasn't really a scary film on the whole, but I think that's unfair to kind of judge the scare levels of this compared to the first one, say, which I saw as a kid. Of course that would scare me as a kid, and I think if I'd have seen this one at the age that I saw the original, it would have scared me just as much, if not more so. So yeah, I think it's a decent film. I'll give it a 3 out of 5. And my number 4 spot is Freddy vs. Jason. That's right, it's the franchise crossover that got the hero of Nightmare on Elm Street and the hero of Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees, stuck them together for a bit of a Royal Rumble. It's just a good kind of roller coaster ride. It's a fun film. It's a film that knows its audience and knows where it's come from. It doesn't take itself too seriously. Really enjoyable ride. Again, still only something I would call a good film, not a very good film or a great film. I'd give it a 3 out of 5. In the number 3 spot for me is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. Yep, that's it. It's the Dream Warriors. This is essentially when Wes Craven came back, but kind of didn't either. He wrote the original draft of the script for this. Again, we're back to a really solid concept. It's something that Craven has excelled at when it comes to this film. He doesn't seem to come back to this franchise unless he feels he's got a really good concept. And for this, it was the idea that Heather from Nancy, played by Heather Langenkamp from the original film, would come back and teach these kids who are going through horrible nightmares, who have this trouble, who all have this shared dream about Freddy Krueger, and she helps them to become warriors in their dream. That concept is really good. Plus, you know, you're bringing back this character that everyone loved from the first film, and it just adds weight, I think, to the franchise by having an already established character return like that. A really good example of the genre, and I give it a 3.5 out of 5. Now, these final 2, I honestly couldn't decide, and you obviously know if you're a fan which 2 they are, but I couldn't decide which to put in number 1, and I think just by virtue of it being original at the time, I'm going to put the first film at number 1, which means that Wes Craven's New Nightmare is at number 2. Now, what I love about this film is just how it is a sequel, but it isn't. It's an original film in its own right that kind of acknowledges that the original series are just movies, and it's really creative. Again, Wes Craven showing his creativity there, coming back and doing something completely different with the franchise, but making it work, making it still fit in with that franchise. I feel actually in this film, Robert Englund is the weakest aspect. Not when he's playing Freddy, but when he's playing himself. But beyond that, yeah, 3.5 out of 5. And so we're left with the original 1984 film. A classic, I think. It's lost some of its sheen over the years as far as I'm concerned. I wanted to give it a 4 out of 5 when I saw it recently just because of what I remembered about it, but I couldn't quite bring myself to do that. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. And the reason is the ending. The last act has so many problems, I feel, that I can't quite bring myself to give it a 4 out of 5. despite that, this is still a classic in the sense of what it did for the genre, in the sense of its creativity, the ideas. It's so full of ideas, and in the sense that it gave us this iconic cinematic figure in Freddy Krueger. So by all those standards, yeah, this is a really great film, a classic film, one that definitely deserves to be watched. So there you go, there is my ranking of all the films in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Thank you to Lee for having me on your channel. You are a brother, mate, and I look forward to working with you, as I know I will, again in the very near future. Beyond that, over to you, mate.
Okay guys, I watched quite a few movies this week. One day I did 6 movies, and we'll get to that. I'll show you why I watched 6 movies. But anyway, let's get started with what I watched. First off, I watched one of my favorite remakes, the Evil Dead remake, directed by Fede Alvarez. I always have a fun time with this, and I know there's quite a few people that don't like this one, maybe because it feels so different from the original, but to me that's a bonus. I don't like remakes that really copy the original. And this one does have some winks and nods to the original, but it's really its own beast. And I also like that there's not really a timestamp on it. It could actually be a sequel. You know, they don't really spell that out for you. Ash could still exist in this world, which I think is really cool. But this one's just so dark and gritty and just bloody as hell. Bloody. Next up, I did Jeepers Creepers. I just dropped a review on this yesterday. And I haven't watched this movie in ages, but I really had a blast with it. I forgot how iconic the Creeper is as a horror villain. And he is perfect for this role. He is just super, super creepy. So the movie really earns its name. So definitely check out my review on that if you haven't. Okay, so now for the 6 movies that I did in one day. I actually did sort of a Halloween 1 through Resurrection marathon. I had never done a marathon of a franchise or really just a bunch of horror movies in a row. So I always wanted to try this, and I was off work that day, had the house to myself really, so I said, hey, why not just do the Halloween franchise up to Resurrection?
Oh God, I love that. Oh. About to hit the thumb in the forehead. Oh, there it is. Thumb in the forehead. Love it, love it.
I'll make it just Myers though, so I cut out part 3, and I ended up skipping 6 because I watched 6, if you remember, for my week 1. So really, it's mostly Myers except for Halloween 6. I cut that one out. But let me just say, I had such a blast doing this. I thought it would be really tiresome and I wouldn't enjoy it as much, but I ended up loving it actually. And I think part of that is because I vlogged the whole time. I'd be watching every movie, and about 2 or 3 times during every movie, I would just throw the camera up and give my thoughts, you know, my actual thoughts during said scene. And I actually enjoy reviewing this way. It's a little different than me sitting down here and taking notes and, you know, preparing everything for you guys. This was like a safety net had been dropped out. I just gave my spontaneous thoughts of the movie, and I had a blast doing it so much that I want to continue doing this. And that video was really successful for my channel. Immediately, I got so much feedback from fans saying, hey, this is an awesome idea. I'd love to see you do this more. So yeah, I'm gonna do it more. But I'm not gonna go into my thoughts on all 6 of those movies because that would take forever. But if you watch the vlog, I'll post a link here, you can see my thoughts. So next up, I watched not the Disney Frozen, but the horror Frozen, the Adam Green Frozen. And this is a really underrated movie, and it's even more underrated now that it's been overshadowed by the Disney flick. But I love these horror movies that just take place in one location if they're done correctly. And this one is done perfectly by Adam Green. I think it's his best movie, really. But just imagine if you and 2 friends were stuck up on a ski lift for a whole weekend and it's freezing outside. And if you jump, you're gonna break your legs and you're gonna be susceptible to the nature, the wolves, all that stuff. So all that's in this movie, it is fantastic. It is a thrill ride. I loved it. So definitely check out Adam Green's Frozen. Okay, next up I did Excision. I watched this movie a couple years ago and it really just knocked my socks off. As a matter of fact, I was on Blu-ray.com during a 31 Days of October 2013 or something like that, and somebody said Excision was their favorite movie, and if somebody does that, it piques my curiosity. What about this movie is better than every other movie they've ever seen? And so I threw it in, and I could see how somebody would say Excision is that exceptional. It is a very unique movie. If you like almost art house horror, but with a really gory touch, really eccentric characters with a comedic edge, then Excision will be right up your alley. And Anna Lynn McCord does a fantastic job in this movie, so definitely check out Excision. Next up, I did Psycho 2. And this is actually the next review that I'm preparing, but this is one of my favorite direct sequels, you know, to a horror classic, which is Psycho. Psycho is one of the greatest horror movies ever. And to pull out a movie, you know, 20 plus years after and it be that good is no easy feat. But I love Psycho 2. Tom Holland, I believe, was the writer of this movie or director. I'll have to look at my facts on that, but I know he had a big part in this movie and he does a great job with this. I love the story. Psycho 2 is excellent. And it's always cool to see how somebody that served prison time for 20 years, how they deal with life when they get out. And this one touches on that. Okay, not all the movies that I did this week are great. The Roommate is one that I threw in. And I've seen this one before. It's one of those Blu-ray movies that I bought and I kind of regret buying it, but it's not all bad, and it's really a single white female remake. I mean, there's been quite a few obsession movies out there, but this one just doesn't really take any risks. It's by the numbers, it's got all those pretty shiny people in it, and it doesn't really push the envelope at all. So I think that is its ultimate downfall. But if you want to kill an hour and a half and not be completely bored and you've never seen it, then I would say maybe check it out, but it's nothing special. And then lastly, I had to do one of my favorite sequels that might not be appreciated as much by horror fans, and that's Psycho 3. And really that's for nostalgia reasons, because I saw this in a drive-in movie theater when I was 13 years old back in the 80s with The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. And I remember just loving it. Really, it's one of the first, not the first, but it's one of the few first horror movies that I really, you know, saw and sunk my teeth into. It's really my only drive-in movie theater experience, so it's near and dear to my heart, and I always enjoy Psycho 3. Plus, it's got some really weird elements to it that make it different from the other Psycho movies, and Jeff Fahey is just a trip in it. All right, guys, I know I watched a lot this week, but thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all you guys do for my channel. I just passed 3,500 subscribers. Really cool. Again, I have to pinch myself because I constantly am shocked. I actually posted on Facebook the other day that in January of 2015, I decided to do something that scared me to death. I don't like public speaking, much less doing it right in a camera, like right there. I really didn't think anybody would ever want to watch what I said about a movie because there's so many movie reviewers out there on YouTube. And to say that I'm here now with 3,500 subscribers is crazy to me, just crazy. I still can't believe it. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And make sure you join the Killer Flicks Facebook group where we talk horror all day, every day. We are having a blast this month. Also, make sure you subscribe to my guests this week. I'll put links to their channels below. Like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And Drumdum out.